What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm going to be bringing you another new segment, this time on AMC's hit TV series, The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is basically in the post-apocalyptic zombie genre, so if you're into science fiction, if you're into zombies, if you're into the post-apocalyptic subgenre, then this is the series for you. You need to be watching this show, ladies and gentlemen. The cinematography is awesome. The way they manipulate what you see and what you hear, the way they've directed this thing, awesome, awesome. The writing, the way they approach the themes and subplots from multiple angles is also very adept, very astute. Just an all-around great writing job. And it's also about the psychological relationships between people, the way they explore the horror of the situation in which these people or these group of survivors find themselves, is awesome. And there's also a heavy emphasis on gore and realism. So if you're a little faint of heart, you might not want to watch this. But otherwise, the action and the drama, and the suspense is just amazing. So basically, today I'm going to be giving you a review of the season 2 premiere of The Walking Dead, that just came on Sunday night. So I'm going to be doing this in two parts. The first part is a summary of this episode, and the second part is going to be a more in-depth analysis of what happened in this week's episode of The Walking Dead. Okay, so if you remember at the end of the last season, in episode 6, they were at the CDC with the scientist Dr. Jenner, and he basically blew up. Well, he didn't blow it up, but basically what happened was the building blew up in order to contain the viruses that were inside the building, because the building had run out of power. So everybody got away from the CDC. And after that, they decided that they were going to go to Fort Bennington, to try and see if there were any more survivors, or to see what could be done to sort of fight the situation that they find themselves in. So they're on their way to Fort Bennington in this episode, and they're on the highway, and they come across basically their path is obstructed by sort of vehicles, overturned vehicles. Basically, when everybody tried to leave Atlanta, there were huge traffic jams, a lot of accidents. So they see that their path is blocked. However, they don't have enough gasoline to sort of turn around and find an alternative route. So what they have to do is snake their way through these obstacles. During that process, however, the RV breaks down, and so they have to stop on this stretch of highway and find a way to fix the RV so that they can continue on their way to Fort Bennington. While Dale, who's the driver of the RV, I think he owns the RV, it's sort of implied that he does. While he's fixing the RV, they decide that this is going to be a good opportunity to scavenge for supplies. Because obviously, when a lot of people left Atlanta, they took a lot of things with them. So they start scavenging for supplies. They find, for example, a set of tools like hatchets that they can use to kill the zombies. They also find water and just a lot of other useful things. But while they're scavenging, a horde of walkers, as they're known as, approach them, and there's got to be at least 50 or 60 zombies in this horde, or herd as someone else calls them. So what they basically have to do is hide underneath the cars. And while they're hiding underneath the cars, I guess the walkers are too stupid to notice them, or whatever, or they couldn't smell them because of all the other dead people that were in the cars. They walk past them. But what happens is the girl, Sophia, I forget her mother's name, but Sophia comes up from underneath the car too early. And when she does that, there are two walkers who are kind of like, straggling behind the others, and they see her and start chasing her. What then happens is she hops over the guardrail for the highway and she runs into the woods to try and escape them. She panics and she's trying to escape from them, so she just blindly runs into the woods. Rick sees what's going on, so he crawls from underneath the car and goes after her. And so the whole episode basically surrounds around trying to get Sophia back, to try and find her. She gets lost in the woods or whatever. At first, I thought I wasn't gonna like this episode because I was thinking that this is just a plot device to try and drag it out. And I really didn't want to, watch an episode that basically revolved around trying to find this little girl. But it turns out that this episode is actually very good. This episode is actually, rather than dragging out the plot, it turns out that this episode uses the girls escape from the walkers and her being lost in the woods as a plot device for the exploration of other subplots and themes. So two of the themes that get explored is the tension between ethics and efficiency. And well, actually, there's three themes. The second one is about the rationality of suicide that we also saw in the last episode, which was the episode 6 of season 1. And also the theme about what are the characters' relationship to God and religion. So basically, the first theme about the tension between ethics and efficiency, the writers did an excellent job of this theme. Not only because of the complex way that they handled the theme, but also because they came at this theme from multiple angles. So the first way that they came at this theme was through Rick's hero complex. When Rick goes after the girl who ran into the woods, and he's not able to find her, well, he kills the walkers who were coming after her, but somehow she gets lost and she's not able to find her way back to the group of survivors. After he's unable to find her and he comes back, he basically says to the people, we can't leave. I have to go back and we have to look for her. So they go back and they look for the girl, and they've been looking for her all day, and they're in danger of being left out in the woods during the nighttime, which is obviously something that you don't want, when there's the possibility that zombies are going to be coming after you in the woods. But he tells the people that he can't go back. And what happens is we basically get to see a more complex unfolding of Rick's hero complex. Basically, he has an obsession with doing the right thing, and he has an obsession with trying to save everybody. Basically, what's happened to Rick is that he's assumed the responsibility of doing nearly the impossible. And once he takes on the responsibility of doing the impossible, which is trying to save everybody's life, then once he fails at doing that, he blames himself. He takes all the responsibility onto himself, and this is basically transformed into guilt. And once that happens, this produces an obsession with ethics, and it produces even more of a need to try and save everyone. So Rick is basically caught in a cycle, in sort of a dangerous cycle, because you have to ask yourself, at what point does your commitment to ethics compromise the safety of everyone else in the group? And so the way that that was explored in the episode, I thought was very realistic, and it portrayed Rick as a very sympathetic character, because we understand that even though his reasoning may be flawed in some aspect, because we have to weigh the life of this one girl, and even though it may sound horrible, this is the type of ethical calculations that we have to engage in. We have to weigh the we have to weigh this one girl's life versus the safety of everyone else in the group. And so we get to see sort of the things. We get an in-depth look at Rick's psychology, and we get to look at the sort of things that motivate his actions. And this makes him a very sympathetic character, because on the one hand we agree that as humans we have to be committed to doing what's ethical, but on the other hand we also have to think about the safety of everyone else in this situation. we also get this through daily, this tension between the one who owns the RV and who drives the RV. We get this another sort of angle on this exploration of the tension between ethics and efficiency. When the RV breaks down, Dale obviously has to fix the RV. He fixes the RV, but he doesn't tell anybody else that he's fixed it. And his reasoning for this, that he tells, I forget the black guy's name, but he tells the black guy that the RV's already been fixed. And the black guy says, well, why are you just bullshitting around? Why are you pretending like you have to fix the RV when it's already been fixed? And his reasoning is that um he has to delay the inevitable decision between weighing the balance of the young girl's life who's lost in the woods and the safety of everyone else. Because he says that once people realize that they're able to move, once they realize that they're able to mobilize, basically, then everyone will be more tempted to leave, and therefore leave the little girl lost in the woods. So what we get to see here is that um, Daly is trying to basically keep people away from their own inhumanity. He's trying to keep them away from the temptation of leaving the little girl out in the woods. And this really shows Daly as a sort of manipulative character. Um, Daly was portrayed in the first season as someone who was ethical, as someone who was reasonable, or one of the more rational members of the group. But we get to see through this scene how he's actually quite manipulative, and how he can sort of manipulate the thinking of people around him. And I don't know what they're going to do with this sort of manipulative aspect of his character, but this could actually be quite an interesting premise that the writers can build on in this upcoming season. I can't wait to see what they do with this, because remember, Daly also saw Shane when Shane was in the woods in the last season, and he was pointing the gun at Rick. Remember, Daly saw that, but up to this point, he hasn't told Rick about that situation, and he hasn't spoken about it. So this is yet another instance where we see the ways in which Daly is able to manipulate what people think through withholding information from them. So this could be a very interesting aspect of the series for this upcoming season, like I said before. So basically, we get to see the complex motivating factors behind people's actions through an exploration of this theme of the tension between ethics and efficiency. And also, I think that Daly is probably, it's clear that he doesn't have a hero complex. I think that's pretty clear. Other people might disagree with that, but I think he's also doing this because he realizes that once people have to make the decision, make these sorts of impossible ethical decisions, that this will eventually lead to the fracturing of the group. And he probably understands that group cohesion is absolutely essential to the survival of everyone in the group. The other theme that comes up in this episode is the theme of suicide, and whether or not suicide is a rational decision. As we saw in the last episode in season one, the black woman who's the wife, I believe, of the African American gentleman, chose to stay in the CDC and basically be killed by the blast. The woman, Adrian, whose sister, Amy, died, also decided to stay there. But Daly basically forced her hand, because remember, he told her, if you don't leave, then I'm not leaving. So he basically forced her to give up her plans to, kill herself, and forced her to continue living. So basically, how this theme of the rationality of suicide gets played out is that there's also a tension between the rationality of suicide versus the ethics of killing yourself and succumbing to fatalism, to succumbing to the fatalism of the situation in which these people find themselves. That being that the world appears to be pretty much over in terms of civilization. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat this or to go around it. Um, I think that from a personal standpoint, I think that the woman Adrian is right and that Dale is probably wrong. If we think about the situations where it would be more preferable to kill ourselves rather than live, think about the fact that there are some things in this world that are worse than death. So think about the people who are like maybe paralyzed, but they're tortured by excruciating pain. And this happens more often than we might think, where a person is paralyzed, but they're unable to move, but they can still feel pain. And so they have to basically live their lives out in constant pain. In a situation like that, I think that it would be, I mean, rational to decide that death is preferable to living under the constant torture of pain. And to parallel that situation with this situation, I don't really see too much of a difference because, like I said before, the world is basically over. Um, Every place that they've gone to so far has been shown to be populated by hordes of zombies. They live under constant threat of being killed by these zombies. They live under constant threat of starvation, and basically under the constant haunting of basically losing their minds. And so in this situation, I think that it might be preferable. At least I think a rational argument can be made for why it's preferable to die rather than continue to live in this world that may not be worth living in. Insofar as, you have to contend with hordes of zombies. Basically, it comes down to that. This also exposes, in some sense, um, how Dale's decision to force Adrian to leave the CDC by staying there, by telling her that he's going to stay there as long as she stays there. This also shows that Dale's decision is somewhat unethical. And here's why I say that. I think that Dale's decision to force Adrian to save her own life by not staying in the CDC, the Center for Disease Control base, is what CDC stands for, when it gets blown up, is because he takes away her ability to make rational decisions about her own life. And I think that that's quite unethical to force someone's hand in that way. When we think about killing oneself, it's not clear that that's overtly unethical. In other words, it's not clear that it's the wrong decision to want to kill yourself and to actually go through with killing yourself. But if in the course of trying to kill yourself, you bring harm to another person, then that's clearly unethical. And so when Dale stays at the tells Adrian that he's going to stay in the CDC and be killed along with Adrian, then he forces her to have to make a sort of ethical decision about whether or not she wants to die with Dale's death on her conscience. And so by doing that, Dale takes away Adrian's ability to make, like I said before, to make rational decisions about her own life. And to me, that's profoundly unethical on Dale's part, to force her hand in that way. Um, but what's somewhat ironic about this is that we also get a sort of sub theme of the sexism of Dale. Here's what I mean by that. Remember when Jim gets bit by the walker in season one, and he tells them that he basically wants to be left on the side of the road, that he wants to die with his family, and that he doesn't want to go along with everybody to the CDC. And Dale brings up the fact that um what he was gonna say at the camp when everyone finds out that Jim got bit by the walker is that it should be Dale's decision about what he wants to do with the rest of his life. Now we have to juxtapose Dale's previous decision to want to yield to what Jim wants to do with the rest of his life, to Adrian's decision to want to kill herself. And in the situation with Jim, he thought that Jim was being perfectly rational. And he didn't argue with Jim when Jim said that he wanted to be left on the side of the road to die. But he did intervene in Adrian's decision to kill herself at the CDC. And to me, this brings up the theme of sexism and sort of paternalism, because basically by taking away Adrian's ability to make rational decisions about her own life and about whether or not she wants to continue with her life, he basically treats her like a child. He basically tells her that she's not being rational and that she can't be trusted to make decisions about her own life. And so in that respect as well, Dale is also being deeply unethical. Another theme that comes up in this episode is the survivor's relationship to religion and their relationship to God. And this comes out most explicitly in the church scene, where the mother of Sophia, the girl who's been lost in the woods, is praying to basically a statue of Jesus Christ inside the church. And this forces us to consider the existence of God, and it forces us to consider the ethics of God. And here's what I mean. If God is really an all-powerful deity, and he has the power to stop unethical things from happening, then as far as I can tell, God has an ethical obligation, and he has an ethical responsibility to stop unethical things from happening, or to at least stop horrible things from happening. We find out that the world is basically being overcome by zombies. I don't know what the casualty estimates are, but you have to assume that since this is now a global pandemic, that the number of deaths have to be at least in the hundreds of millions, and probably in the billions. So we have to question the ethics of a God who's powerful enough to stop this from happening, but yet who stands by, if he exists, who stands by and allows this to happen. And so at the very least, the church scene forces us to question God's ethics, and to question whether or not he's really either all powerful, or whether he really is an all merciful God. Another angle that the writers come at this question of the survivor's relationship between religion and ethics, religion and God. Another angle that they come at this from is Rick's scene in the church. Everybody at this point, everybody has left the church, and Rick comes into the church, and he's talking to God, and he tells God, I haven't always been a faithful follower, but I need at this point, I need you to give me some sign that I'm going in the right direction. I need some symbol of hope, and for hope for the other survivors to tell me that my existence as a survivor during this global pandemic is meaningful, that my life can be meaningful, and that I can begin to build a new life during these times. And basically, what we see here is the religious authority of God juxtaposed against the secular authority of Rick. And if you remember, Rick is wearing his sheriff's uniform, and the sheriff's uniform symbolizes or represents secular authority. The ultimate secular authority, which is the law of the government, even though the government has broken down during this time. It represents Rick's commitment to ethics, and it represents his commitment to basically what was the law. And so we what we and so Rick decides at the end of that little, I guess it's kind of like a prayer. What he decides at the end of that, I think, is that if he's not going to be able to get a sign from God, if God isn't going to be protecting him and his family and the rest of the survivors, then it basically falls on him, as a man and as a human being, to do whatever he can to sort of keep hope alive and to sort of protect the rest of the survivors. And so we see a transition from faith to secular authority, or faith in man. And so I like the way that the people who wrote this came at this theme from multiple angles. One thing that I really, really liked about this episode, and that I continue to like about this, going as far back as the first episode of the first season, is that this TV show genuinely scares me. And I'm the type of person who, I mean, I love horror films. I can watch horror films and I can even watch, right up to the most suspenseful points where it's very scary. I can watch that straight through with, and I'll be scared, but I won't, have any sort of reaction. But this shit, man, this shit genuinely scares me, especially because I watched this early this morning. It's like 5 o'clock right now. I watched this around 2:30 this morning, so it was dark. I had all the lights out. I was, in the bed under the covers, watching this on my laptop. And on in some scenes, I actually had to, put my face down in the pillow because I couldn't watch because this shit is like genuinely scary. So the producers and the cinematographers are doing an excellent job of keeping this very suspenseful and genuinely scaring the shit out of you. And also, what they like to do is misdirection, and this works very well. I know a lot of other horror movies have employed this technique of misdirection, but there's this scene where Rick's son Michael is scavenging in a car, and there's a dead body. And this is the scene that I had to, put my face down in the pillow because up to this point we really haven't seen children get attacked yet. Even though this is very graphic, very gory, very committed to realism, and very committed to the violence, to expose to showing the violence of the situation, we haven't seen children get attacked yet. And so I couldn't watch it where he, opens the door and scavenges and is scavenging around that dead body, because you're not sure if the person's really dead or if they're a walker. But nothing happens in that scene. But something does happen, and I'm not going to spoil it. But something does happen at the end of the episode, um, where you're totally not expecting it. You're kind of expecting it, but it really throws you for a loop at the end of this episode. So you definitely need to watch this episode, the season premiere, the season 2 premiere of Walking Dead, in order to see what that sort of plot twist is at the end of this episode. One thing that I dislike, one character that I really dislike, in this series is that goddamn kid, Michael, Rick's son. Oh man, this kid is so fucking annoying, and you can tell that this is well, no, not probably. This is their only child, and this is their first child. Um, so they're not really sure how to handle his youthful rebellion. So in one of the scenes in this episode, um, uh, Michael, I think that's the kid's name, Michael, um, his mother tells him to do something, and he looks to Shane, and he tells Shane to tell his mother to allow him to do what he wants to do, and the mother is just standing there and she doesn't say anything. And I'm thinking to myself, if that kid was black, if these were black people, the mother would have smacked the shit out of this kid. I mean, black parents just don't put up with that. When they tell you to do something, you do that shit. There's no back talking, and you can't ask someone else to tell your parents to allow you to do anything. That's basically an invitation to getting your ass whooped. And this kid, and another part where the kid asks to be brought along for the search party for the girl Sophia who's lost in the woods, and they allow him to come. I mean, to me, that's just not a very smart move. Because like Rick says when he goes after the girl, um, and he goes alone, it's much harder to defend yourself when you also have to defend someone else, especially when the person that you have to defend is not only a child, but is your child, which means that you're much more likely to do irrational things. And so they probably shouldn't brought him along, and they should really, nip his youthful rebellion in the bud before it gets them in trouble. I see this as being possibly another interesting direction, although maybe not now because of the plot twist that happens at the end. So yeah, this was another amazing quality episode from AMC's hit TV series The Walking Dead. If you haven't checked this show out yet, you should really get into checking this show out. It's really awesome, like I said. So again, this is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.